Good morning. Welcome. We are at the last Sabbath of this quarter. We are concluding our series on Exodus. We do so by looking at the Tabernacle, and we're just incredibly pleased that you're with us and that we're going to take some time just looking at how this whole idea of the Tabernacle plays into God's broader story with his people. We're going to pray, and then we're going to get right into it. So won't you join me? God, we want to thank you for your presence. And as we experience your presence, we simply would ask that your presence inspire us to be present for others. For we pray these things in your name. Amen. So I've got my good friend all the way from down under, Chris Stanley. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well.
Good.
It's good to see you. How you doing?
Good to see you. Doing great. Brilliant. School's back in session. So,
yes.
We all did the whole welcome back bash. You all stole it. So for those of you who don't know, Loma Linda's back in session this week. All programs are back in this week. And in order to commemorate the start of the quarter, we have this big event on the Founders Lawn. And everybody, all the schools, all the clubs have little booths, and the church always has a booth, and it is always by far the most popular booth.
Bless you. Now, it's a wonderful time where students come in and they see the life of the campus. They see the clubs, they see the various places where they can get connected, they see the resources, they see the services, and our church is a part of that. And so, yeah, we run little games, give little prizes, just to let them know that we're here for them, that we like them, and that if they need anything, we got their back. So, no, we had some fun with we dressed up. It was a 70s theme. We were spinning some tunes. We had this little game where people were loading vinyls, and that was fun.
Yeah, I know. And then there were a couple impromptu games, I think, because I saw like a basketball hoop and stuff.
Yeah, somebody just dragged out a butt and started shooting hoops for some reason.
As one does.
We had this carefully coordinated game with prizes and anyway, helping people sign up, and then basketball as well. So.
Yeah. So this is what I love about just personalities and the personalities on your own staff is that you have kind of these free-spirited, let's just create something on the fly.
That's right.
And then you've got people who are very methodical. Our good friend and colleague Joel Royer's been in charge of this event for years.
Yes.
And Joelle does great at it because she's very organized and very methodical. I can just picture her face as that basketball hoop was being rolled out and just the horror. But it worked. It worked. I saw it from afar. It worked. It seemed like everybody had a blast.
Exactly.
And students are just really, really happy. I think that the church is kind of woven now into the life of the campus.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And that's a wonderful thing. Like our You Reach Cafe, it's the place to sit down and have a chat and meet people. And that's at the center of campus there. And no, I think it's wonderful that all the various groups on campus are working together just to improve the student experience here for these kids as they do something very, very difficult, and that they know that the church is there for them. No, I love it.
They were there. They were there. That was on Monday. Then they were there for convocation on Wednesday, and I'll tell you, I've never seen, for all the chapels that I've had the chance to attend, I've never seen it this full of students. It was just a really good spirit in the air. And then it's really important to see kind of at the forefront the people that will be foundational to their journey here. So all of the deans from the different schools were up there. Obviously our president, who just reminded us of mission, which is what I love about Dr. Hart. With him, it's always mission-driven, mission-focused. Yeah. And then you had Dr. Carter, our provost on the university side, just encouraging and reminding people of why we began the school year with a convocation, kind of this opportunity to present ourselves before God and commit ourselves before God, both as faculty, as students, and as staff. And then you had Randy's representing spiritual life, and Terry Swenson representing student spiritual life, and then obviously Carl Hafner, who's representing student experience. So you kind of had this really nice, I think, start to the school year where there's so many resources that are being thrown at our students.
And yeah, you have this you have this symbolic cosmological representation of student life all coming together in this spiritual activity, which is a segue to the Tabernacle later. But like
Right.
you have this moment where in one service everything that is life for these students gets represented and brought down into this hour where we put it all together and work out what it all means together. Because that's what you do in spiritual activities. Like you have all these various parts, but you put them all together to see what they mean in culmination, and you need to do that sometimes. And to start that way, good work.
Yeah, no, that's, I think, and to segue into the lesson, I think that's what's central and important about places like this. You can go to any university, folks. You can go to any university. You can go to UCLA, and they will have a Department of Religious Studies at UCLA, or UCSD, or Harvard. Princeton. We will have departments of religious studies, and really what those departments do is they attempt to look at the phenomena that is religion, both psychologically, anthropologically, sociologically.
Yes.
And that's very different than what we do here. Here we do theology. And the difference is that there is a certain degree of faith that is presupposed in order to enter into the conversation. Not necessarily our faith, but a faith. And I think that's very unique about both Loma Linda and some other institutions that really are not just looking at religion. We could do that very easily. We can simply say, we are a healthcare institution, and our relationship to religion is merely looking at the looking at the benefits that religion has health-wise. We could do that, and there's a mountain of data that would help us do that. But what we do, I think, is theology in the sense that when we get together for any religious activity, whether it be on a lawn or in chapel or today on the Sabbath, we are actually asking not questions about how we relate to religion sociologically or psychologically or anthropologically. We are actually asking questions about meaning. And that, I think, is really important, particularly in this time and place where questions are of meaning are being discussed almost everywhere else in society. And so I think it speaks very well of us that we have this place where we're actually asking and having those conversations.
Because I think it works best when you do, as you say, when you presuppose faith and when you pursue these activities for the sake of understanding meaning. Because as you say, like there is a lot of information and data that we've collected about how prayer works, and as a discipline, we see all of that. We can measure the heart rate, we can measure the psychological response, we can measure, the communal, results of people praying together. We can have a look at all of that functionally, how it works. But there is also something to be said for the fact that when you pray, what you believe matters for the outcomes of that prayer to a certain extent. So what you believe you are doing in the fact that you believe you are communicating to God, or, if you're not using theological language, like meaning and purpose in that moment, your beliefs as you enter into that, I think, are important for the outcomes. And so, as you say, like a theological approach to saying, listen, we do these things because we do believe we are entering into these conversations about meaning and purpose and God, because they are ultimately important, is very different than saying, well, listen, here's a phenomena called religion, let's understand it. And so to continue to center our community's activities on that expectation that we are entering into the very core of existence with the questions of meaning and purpose and God as the focus of what we're doing that collectively, it does have a very different outcome for our community, and I like it. I think it's good.
It's an outcome, I think, that, as you're saying, is not only different, but it is focused and forces us to have a different type of conversation.
Yeah.
So Feuerbach, the famous sociologist, says that religion is nothing more than misguided anthropology. If you're talking about religion as phenomena, as the phenomenology of religion is what people call it in academia, then I think Feuerbach has a point. But I think, and I was just a couple of weeks ago, was really engaged in a pretty heated conversation with one of my program mates, and the argument that we were having was, is faith necessary to talk, to study, and to enter into not looking at religion as phenomena, but looking, as you're saying, at religion and as faith as meaning, which is what I think theology attempts to do. And my argument was it is absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
It is not just the faith. I mean, you can have faith in whatever you want to call, whatever construct that is. For me, that is, I have faith in both the Trinity and Jesus Christ as the incarnate Son of God. That is necessary for me to do Christian theology. So if you're going to do Christian theology, a faith in the Christian God is necessary, a priori, because that, I think, is what's going to push the conversation, not just from looking at the measurable effects that religion has, but actually at the deeper questions that are questions of meaning and purpose. And they're the precise questions, I think, that draw the Israelites to respond to God's command to build a tabernacle. This isn't just about the phenomena of what it means sociologically to come together in an act of corporate worship, and how that tightens the bond and solidifies the identity of a community, though one could have studied that. But I think much more is going on here, as God is attempting, I think, to have them start digging up these deeper questions of meaning and purpose, and these, to use another academic word, the questions of ontology, of who am I and why am I here?
And there's got to be better metaphors than this, but yeah, I think you are correct. I think the content of your faith is important to consider, and not just the actions of faith. We look at the benefits of corporate worship and things like that, and we can measure it like it's a successful thing, but you do have to ask the questions of what that corporate worship is about to analyze precisely its outcomes. And so you give a metaphor such as, listen, it works well for people to come together and sing together and be in community together. And so we could go to a Taylor Swift concert and measure that, and we'd be like, listen, everybody's enjoying this moment where they're all singing together and they feel, bonded with each other, a lovely thing. But you've also got to ask a really important question about what that concert is actually about. And so the content of the music and the ideas being espoused there. And so, you come together, Taylor Swift songs, and sing about love and life and all those sort of things. But it's not just the phenomena occurring. It's the question of what it is actually about. And so, as you say, what we encounter here in the Tabernacle is not just a, phenomena of religion being constructed, but to understand it correctly and to understand exactly how it works, you do have to ask the question of what it is about. And as you're saying, it is about God asking the Israelites to understand this world and this existence in a particular way.
I think that's really important to note, because I think particularly post-Enlightenment, and even now, if you go, and it's great work being done. I just spent close to a month ago, a week with Harold Koenig, who's works out of Duke University and does wonderful research in the area of medical and health benefits to religion and spirituality, which is brilliant. But I think you're right in the sense that post-Enlightenment, because religion wanted to have a seat at within the Academy of Sciences, we started doing religion a bit differently. So we said, okay, well, what can we actually measure? What is quantifiable? And there's a lot of things that are quantifiable. But for example, they looked at the there's a famous study that looks at the effects of prayer as it pertains to length of hospital stays, and it determined that the length of hospital stay of people who were both praying and being prayed for was 1/4 shorter than those who weren't. So incredibly, and so these things are actually measurable, and they're what the researchers say they're statistically significant.
Yep.
There's another famous study that looks at depression rates and anxiety rates among people who go to church and realize that they are, again, statistically significantly lower. Life expectancy, cholesterol. There's been so much data in quantitative studies that looks at these effects and says, well, there's something to religion. But really what we're measuring is the phenomena, and I'm not sure. This is a question that I've always puzzled with. Is it's great, but I can have a otherworldly, quote unquote, mystical experience at a Taylor Swift concert. I'm doing the same things. I'm coming together.
Yes.
I'm worshiping.
Yep.
Quote unquote.
Yep.
There's a liturgy.
Yes.
There's an order to worship. It's participatory in a way. So I can have a mystical experience that does a lot of things, that floods my body with endorphins, that lowers my cortisol levels. And in essence, we can measure that. I think what's unique about religion isn't that it seeks to find a place in the Academy of Sciences. It's that actually religion, as Paul Tillich says, looks at these issues of ultimate concern, these things that really matter.
The ground of all being is his words.
So
yes.
What is it that we're doing when we come together? Are we simply singing a chorus in unison and saying we are having a quote unquote mystical experience as we sing the chorus of this song that we all know? Or are we actually being asked to reflect upon who we are and what our place in the world is? And I think that's a difference that can't be measured. But I think that's the space that theology in particular, language of faith, and this experience that God is trying to lead the Israelites as they start constructing a place, I think that is a space that ought not to be abandoned.
Yes. No, well said. Paul Tillich's work is fantastic. His words, the ground of all being. What we find here in the text here is ironically, the tabernacle is constructed as a sort of cosmology for the purposes of asking us that question. The question of where do we fit? What are we doing here? Why are we here? The worship is structured for the purpose of us placing ourselves within existence, and in the process of going through this structured cosmology of sorts, how do we encounter God, and how do we exist in relationship to God in this world that we exist in?
Yeah, and I think that again, not to harp again on Tillich, but I think for those of us who look at the issues of theology versus those of us who attempt, which is I think laudable, to look at religion as a social phenomena. I think the difference has to do with two words that Tillich likes a lot. So it's the difference between epistemology and metaphysics. Epistemology is it has to do with what we know, and I think by looking at religion as phenomena, we can learn a lot of things we can know a lot of things. We can know about what happens when, like you're saying, when a group of people come together with a shared goal, with a shared identity, how that shapes and forms you. I think Tillich is more interested in the metaphysical question. What is this event, this action, this worship service, this prayer, this reading scripture, whatever it is you're doing as a religious activity? What does it tell you about meaning? And that's, I think, what metaphysics, with the metaphysical question. What is the meaning of this? What is the deeper meaning of this? And I think in the tabernacle, what you have is meaning being conferred upon things that are concrete and palpable as kind of a way to process meaning. You're absolutely right in saying that what you have is a cosmology being created, and the author of Exodus is very, I think, intentional in reminding us that what you're having is this cosmic recreation that is intended to imbue your worship services with meaning. So you have on both sides of the tabernacle this idea of Sabbath, and then within the middle of that, as you're constructing this place, you have again things that are attempting to concretize meaning, to give palpable language to terms that are very abstract.
Yes, yeah, that's well put. Like when we talk about metaphysics, we're talking about what goes beyond and what is after physics, and that's the question. Like you take. Again, you take what it is, but then you ask what it means. That's what the process is. And so it's an important question to ask, because you can take many things and inspect them and ask the questions of, well, so what is it that's occurring? But then the next question is, what does this mean? And that's a difficult question to sometimes bridge the gap between the ought and the is, between the, well, this is the way it is meant to be, but this is the way it ought to be. This is what it is, but what does it actually mean? And as you say correctly, that is what is happening to reality in this, which is quite a fascinating process. I mean, quite a fascinating religious phenomena, I think. Yeah, so I think what asking these questions about, okay, this is what is, but what does it mean? Probing or making that leap into asking these questions that matter. I think it provides a safeguard. And this is kind of, I was flying back and I was reading this lesson. And the terrible flight from Heathrow back to LAX, somewhere over Iceland, we had turbulence, and I said, "Well, I've got nothing to do, so let me go back and read the lesson and read this section." And it just struck me that by doing this, by making that leap from this which is concrete and what is, to asking the question, okay, so what does it mean? God is actually providing some safeguards in order for religious phenomena not to become rote. And that, I think, is really important because often the questions about around worship that we have aren't structured around meaning. They're structured around the things that we do. So the liturgical questions are less about meaning and more about order and performance. And so this is regardless of where you worship. If you come to Loma Linda, we have a particular liturgy. I had the chance of attending Anglican service just last week. It was incredible to actually hear the words of Scripture sung. But there's Church of England has a different liturgy. If you go to Catholic Church, obviously a different liturgy. But what strikes me is the more you attend whatever church it is, the more anesthetized you become, and the more the liturgy becomes not about meaning, but about
performance and function. And so you'll get up, and here I'll take Loma Linda as an example. So you'll have a welcome followed by the hymn of praise, and you probably don't ask the question, why is the worship service structured in that way? Why is it that we welcome people into worship and then we ask them to stand and continue with a hymn of praise? I think those are the questions that need to constantly be asked as we're interacting corporately in this act of worship, because really it's about the meaning, not the function.
Absolutely. And yeah, what is interesting about this passage here is, as you said, it begins with the Sabbath and it ends with the Sabbath, and you've got these descriptions of the tabernacle, but then smack in the middle you have the question of the people creating, the golden calf. And what you're encountering there is your acts of religious, worship. They can have unintended meaning for who God is and how God relates to this existence and who you are in relationship to God. So you have this structure, this tabernacle, you have this cosmology that places us and God in a very particular relationship, which ultimately has sociological consequences for who we are and how we live and what we do. But then you have this aberration where the meaning of who God is and who we are it becomes problematic in the fact that God is now a golden calf, and it's not per se that the golden calf is as a ritual itself couldn't potentially work for some reason, but in the context of the understanding and the symbols and the culture around, that represented something inherent about God that meant something was going to be problematic for their understanding of God and their understanding of each other. And so, you do need to ask the questions of what your worship service is telling you that it means about God.
And those distinctions are really subtle because they look the same. So if you think about, and I love
but they have consequences.
They have real consequences, and those consequences are markedly different. So if you look at the consequences of tabernacle and of worshiping the golden calf, what is created is completely different. But you don't realize that they're different until you're there, because the language and the way we got there is extremely, extremely similar. So I love that you bring out this point. Tabernacle story starts with God commanding craftspeople to be intentional about how they build something. And there's very specific instructions that are given to Israel about how this tabernacle is going to be constructed. From the actual physical construction of the tabernacle, to the incense that is supposed to be burnt inside the tabernacle, to where the laver of water is supposed to be placed in the tabernacle. Everything has a purpose, and it's this beautiful combination between purpose and art and meaning. I continue to believe that God knows better than we do, that true meaning is not found in long diatribes in conversations, though I love to have them. But true meaning, really, you have to ask the artists and the artisans for where meaning lies in a society. That's what God is doing. At the same time, you have the same artisans, perhaps, the text seems to suggest that, now getting gold together and creating something parallel. You have this idea of God saying, "Build me a sanctuary that I may dwell among you," and what is actually existentially happening is God is self-limiting now. God who is present in a cloud and in a pillar of fire, and God who is present and ruler of heaven and earth is now limiting to a particular tent and place in the middle of his people. The golden calf is also limitation or the attempt to limit God. We talked a few weeks ago how the calf would have represented kind of this instrument that a king would have ridden on, or the footstool of God, or the throne of God. So it had to do with actually locating God, much as the tabernacle does. And so both in creation of and the planning of the worship experience is the same, and the result, or the attempted result of the worship experience, is the same, which is to limit God in a particular place. That's pretty similar. And yet, as you were saying, the results of both this type of worship and this other type of worship are markedly different.
Yes, I mean, obviously, you look at the consequences of the story, and I mean, there's some interesting analogies that come out of it. But you do have In religion is trying to do the same thing in many places, but it doesn't always have the same result. And so in this case, you have the people constructing the calf, and they are saying, God is in this, when God is saying, actually, I'm not, which is quite a phenomenal statement, where they are claiming the presence and the authority of God, where God has clearly said no. And the participation in this form of God understanding is going to be damaging for you and the people, as opposed to the tabernacle God understanding that they're asked to participate in. So it has consequences at the end. As the story goes forward, eventually the restoration of the people, which is the calf is destroyed, and they're actually asked to eat it, and grind it up and drink it, and which is again interesting metaphors and symbols. But again, yes, like the consequences of religion and understanding and where we believe God is. Again, it has vast outcomes for society and for people and who we are.
Yeah. Well, the power of these stories is that they are, as you're saying, or as Tillich famously wrote, the grounding of meaning, because the stories are the same. They don't change. What I think you realize in the Tabernacle version is God is deciding to self-limit. And what we are doing, or what God has called us to do, is to respond to the gracious act of divine self-limitation. I am present everywhere and in all places, but for you I will be present now in this tent, so that I'm palpable and concrete. And I thought a lot as I was reading this about Fowler's stages of faith development, and how we always start with that which is concrete. And again, God, knowing this, says, let me become palpable for you. Let me self-limit. And what you do in worship is you respond to that act. In the calf, I think the subtle difference isn't that we are not trying to respond to what God is doing. We are actually trying to force God to do something.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're going now to create this place where you have to come and you have to dwell and you have to sit. And so we are actually trying to control and to direct and to weaponize the way God presents himself in the world to ensure that we possess a higher religious authority or power than anyone else does. And I think that's where religion, or that's where worship can be very dangerous. One is worship as responsive to what God is doing in the world, and that demands a lot of questions, because you have to ask the question, okay, well, where is God at work in the world already, and how do we respond? The other one is saying, how can we control what God is doing? How can we leverage God? How can we use God as an instrument to further whatever dreams, in this case, it's the dream of security and certainty and power and safety. How do we utilize worship to ensure that those are promoted? And sadly, I think that in a lot of our worship services that have become functional and focused on form and function rather than on meaning, I think that's what you're finding. You're finding that religion is used, or worship is used, as a tool almost to manipulate people into feeling something about themselves, rather than forcing them to ask themselves, how are you responding responsibly to what God is doing?
So I love these moments where I take a swing at an idea and you clarify. I love those. But you're exactly right, because you even look at the symbols being used. I mean, you have this cosmology that represents all of existence that we enter into in the tabernacle, and that's replaced by a cow, which is an animal that was classically subservient in their society. You placed a ring through its nose and you controlled it. You had authority over it. You were the one who used it for your purposes. And so we have this God that is trying to correctly place us within all of existence. And the human response is to say, well, listen, good, but we would like to take control of this phenomena. We would prefer if you were a little more cow-like than all of existence-like. We would prefer if we had the rope attached to the ring through the nose so that we can produce the security, so that we can use this religious tool for control. And it is a temptation of religion that we repeatedly fall into, because it is a very powerful thing to use for the sake of control. You can use it to coerce the masses.
Absolutely.
And that limiting of God, as you say, is very different to the self-limiting action of God, so that we can approach God, and the question of how do we follow God as opposed to how do we control God. Deep questions in society that we find symbolically represented here.
This is what the tabernacle really is about. So we can actually spend, or we could spend our whole hour talking. I mean, I wrote my doctoral dissertation on this, so we could spend a lot of time talking about what the symbols mean, about how God is again attempting to concretize these very abstract ideas. So, for example, the idea of purity as it pertains to your interaction, or the space that you connect with the divine. Purity is important. Well, how do you concretize that idea? Well, you have to ritualize it. And in order to ritualize it, the easiest thing that I can do is I'll create this laver where you can go and you can wash up.
Yep.
So we can spend some time talking. We can also talk, as many of us Adventists have done, about the geography. Because let's face it, Adventists, we love the conversation of the sanctuary as it pertains to geography. What does it mean to have the holy and then the holy of holies? And as we're talking about the tabernacle or the sanctuary, what does it mean to say that God is moved from one apartment or from one phase, as we now have clarified the language, from one phase to the second phase of his heavenly ministry in the tabernacle? I think those are important questions, but I think those are questions of function. I think the deeper question that we have to grapple with is the question of meaning, and I think you are completely correct in noting that it all has to do, really at the core of religion, it has to do with control. And Feuerbach is absolutely right. You can write that down and note the hour and the date, because this will probably be the only time that I both quote Feuerbach and I say he's correct about something. When he says religion is misguided anthropology, he's absolutely right. If you're talking about religion as formal and functional, we have a desire to find out what our place is in the pecking order. And religion says, well, hey, we've got this thing, we've got this construct, we'll call it God. And you are, as long as you follow this God and you are part of this particular group of people, and you perform these rituals, whether that be giving money or a pilgrimage or any of these religious acts that we do, you can control that God and you can curry that God's favor.
Yes.
And there you have the long history, about as long as we've been on the face of this earth, of religion being used as a tool to control people.
Yes. Yes.
So Feuerbach is right. Religion is misguided anthropology in that sense.
Yes.
Problem is, Feuerbach doesn't know that what God is doing here, Exodus 35, is not religion. It's theology. It is God talk. It is, and for that to do proper theology, again, we're doing Christian theology, so we do theology in response to the act of the incarnation in Jesus Christ. When you do that, you're seeking to be responsive to that which God is doing, and in order to do that properly, as good old Anselm writes, you have to have this capacity of fidens quod in intellectum, faith-seeking understanding. And so you start from the premise, we have this belief that God is acting in the world. We have this belief that this God cannot be controlled or coerced or manipulated. And now we're going to see ways in which we can find what that God is doing, attach meaning to that. And then what God already does, gives purpose and meaning to our lives.
It's been a long time since I read Feuerbach, but I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, some of his other metaphors are that religion is just a projection of we throw these human qualities up against the sky, and then they have this cumulative control where the assent of the people creates this downward control over us, and again, a fair and fitting description of the phenomenon that occurs with the calf. I think, I agree in his, as you've said, phenomenological description of how these things can work. But that is a different thing to recognizing, as the Tabernacle tries to tell us, that God is actually something different to God's creation. If you confound them too much, you enter into theological problems. And so whilst God created this order, which is a part of the Tabernacle story, like a part of it also reflects, as you've said, like we do the geography and we do the symbol, but we see in it, the representation of kind of the creation week and, Sabbath to Sabbath, there's this created order that's made in 6 days for the construction of the Tabernacle. And you have your symbol of, the branches and the buds and all of this kind of creation language, but you have God also distinct from creation as well. And so if God weren't distinct from creation, your religious consequences would be as Feuerbach describes. It's just a thing that occurs. But in this tabernacle, God is distinct enough from creation that God gets to speak first and act, and we should seek and do our best to understand God's actions in this world, as to conflating or confusing religion with God's actions.
Yeah, that's such a great point that you're noting. The deep, profound echoes of Genesis that you find in this particular passage. So again, not going to bore you with. Go read the dissertation if you're interested. You just have to type my name in, and then George Fox University dissertation will pop up. If you want to get really bored, you go ahead and read that. But I'll summarize it in 20 seconds or less. There's 7 speeches that God gives Moses in the construction of the sanctuary.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And the last speech is about Sabbath. And so you have not just the creation language, but you also have structurally these echoes of creation occurring in the sanctuary. God is using the tabernacle to create, in essence, a people. Now, it's not the world, but it's a people. And the way in which we best can relate to God is by responding to that which we have in the concrete created order. So, although my favorite theologian, Karl Barth, hated it, I actually am. And this, again, y'all who are not theology geeks are going to tune me out right now. I love everything about Barth's deep commitment to the incarnation. Yeah. Not so crazy on Barth's ideas of revelation. Barth doesn't like natural theology.
Yeah.
I happen to think that if God's primary drive isn't for us to worship him, but rather it is for us to know him, then God is using every tool at God's disposal to be knowable. And the created order is one of the things that we can touch, see, smell, and taste. Those are ways in which we get to know God. They have imprints and fingerprints of the divine. I think you're absolutely right in noting that the trouble theologically and practically happens when we realize that those are just fingerprints. That's not the thing itself. And a lot of Christian theology, now we're going to talk about us and Adventist theology, even closer to where we are located on the spectrum. A lot of the problems that we have created are because we have made idols of the thing, of the reflections and the fingerprints of the thing, rather than recognizing that the thing is separate from that, and it always remains tantalizingly out of reach. So we can get to know God, but even as we strive to know God, that knowledge is forever incomplete. Because God is not the created order. God is not the tabernacle. God is not the doctrine. God is not the Ten Commandments or the Decalogue. God is, as the famous Emil Brunner says, God is not more than, but none other than Jesus Christ. So even Jesus is not the fullness of who God is. And we need to be, I think, very humble in recognizing that, lest we make either golden calves, or later on, you'll see that the tabernacle itself becomes an idol. As Israel says, hey, you know what's a great idea? We need to curry God's favor. We're going to go have a war against the Philistines. Let's take the ark with us, because with that, we cannot lose.
That's right.
And so you have them doing the same exact thing that they did with the calf.
Yeah. And the criticism of Feuerbach is that he fails to recognize that there is an infinite epistemological gap between existence and God. And when we talk about this existence that we have access to, God is still beyond and above and further. God is the initiator and the creator of all of this, but is not limited by all of that. And so, as you say, we encounter this reality, and it's the reality that we live in. But there is a reality that supersedes this. And so Christ participates in this reality, but Christ is also a part of a superseded reality that we don't functionally, epistemologically have access to. And yeah, that is an important, humbling theological idea, because as you say correctly, like afterwards they're like, well, listen, like again, well, we did the God in the calf thing, and God didn't really like that part, right. But we can do the God in the box thing, and so we'll take the box with us, and then we will continue again to reenact the error of a subservient, controlled God. I don't know much about God, but we sure have made a nice little box for him sort of thing where, well, God surely wouldn't let himself be taken in war. So, we'll send our God in a box first. And then the story is funny in the fact that they get completely destroyed. But then when the Philistines take God in a box. They place him in his temple, and God begins to do God things.
Yes.
Despite people's attempts to control God, which is quite entertaining. And I do like that story for that purpose. Yes, but we do a lot of controlling of God.
Yeah, we go from God in a box.
Yeah.
Well, from God in a calf.
Yeah.
To God in a box.
Yeah.
To God in a temple.
Yes.
Ezekiel famously sees the presence of God leaving the you think I'm here on this mountain? No, I'm not here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then from the temple we try to do God in a body, which I think is a beautiful metaphor. But as you're saying, it's also limited. God is more than the incarnation of Jesus. Jesus, I think you're absolutely right, belongs to a different realm of reality. And what we have access to perhaps in the gospel narratives is the closest picture we'll get about God.
Yes.
But it's not the full picture.
Yes.
So we go from God in a box, God in a temple, God in a body, God in a church, God in some doctrines. All right. Some of them which I love, try to recite the Apostles' Creed without weeping, and you're like, this is true, but that's not God. To God in a denomination. And I think all of these are, as you're saying so appropriately, are attempts to control God. And the funny thing is, the more we try to control God, the more God will do God things.
Yeah. It is a dangerous thing to worship a living God. It is. It is.
That needs to get tweeted, posted somewhere.
Make some shirts.
We may hashtag, it is a dangerous thing to worship a living God. But that's ultimately what we're called to do.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, thank you for the conversation.
No, a pleasure.
It's always enlightening. Nowhere else in Adventism, by the way, will you get a conversation on Feuerbach as part of your lesson. So we hope that for those of you that like that kind of stuff, you keep tuning in. For those of you that don't, we're sorry. We'll try to stop nerding out so much. But it's just such a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to have these conversations in a space and in a church still that thinks there's meaning and purpose in the conversation, Chris. So thank you.
Oh, pleasure.
Will you pray for us?
Yeah. To the one above, to the one beyond, to the one in all things, and to the one after things, and to the one before all things. God, we pray to continue to follow your revelation and your ways. Keep us from the temptation of controlling you, but keep us humble before you. Amen.
Amen. So remember that maybe today you see cloudy as through a mirror, but the day will come. The day will come when that epistemological gap will narrow, and you will see clearly, and you will know and be known when you see him face to face. Until next week, God bless you.